In Hollywood, for example, women actually only made up 7% of the directors of the top 250 films. So we could directly correlate that to sexism in Hollywood.
I think as a woman in this industry, there's always, whether underlying discrimination or, just very forward or blatant discrimination, is always there in terms of what people assume you are capable of. Um, Assume that as a filmmaker you can't carry equipment or do certain things or certain jobs. So, you know, it's just about proving people wrong, I think.
Okay. I don't. It's This is a tricky subject because I feel that my situation has been very unique. I feel that because I have worked for the same people over and over again, that I can't come at a point of view saying that I've had any discrimination about the positions and the opportunities I've had, because my employers have been men. My executive producer, Rob Tapper, and his partner, Sam Raimi, have made many, many projects together. They also produced Xena, the Warrior Princess. But they gave me multiple opportunities. And even when I was cast as the sidekick on Xena, if it weren't for Rob Tapper being my advocate in the room saying, no, I want this girl, when the studio said, no, she's too short, she's not pretty enough, she's not skinny enough, all these things, it was my mentor, Rob Tapper, that said, this is the girl, I want this girl, and he fought for me. When I asked Rob Tapper to learn how to direct on our television show, he was the one who enveloped me into their process of making television and allowed me to direct 2 episodes. When I went to Rob Tapper and asked for a letter of recommendation because I wanted to direct more projects that were had larger budgets, he wrote the most beautiful letter about my work ethic and my perseverance and my passion. So for me to look back on my career and think of how would I ever be where I am now if it weren't for him. And there are other men like that too in my world, so I've been very blessed by men.
A lot that goes on from working in that environment. Women behind the, on set actually working on the production. I can't speak to that because I haven't done that myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember one time working as an extra on a movie. It was a while ago. I just did it to have an experience of what it's like to be an extra. And I guess I didn't realize it at the time. I had only just come to the States. And I was befriended by the first AD, and who at one point tried to, make moves on me, and I turned him down.
A lot of my girls tell stories about getting sexually harassed and asked for sexual favors in return for getting work. So I know there's definitely a problem out there happening.
What was your reaction the first time you heard that type of story?
A combination of horrified but not surprised. Really feeling for the person that it happened to. However, we live in a patriarchal society in which rape culture is a given. So it doesn't surprise me that so much sexual harassment happens in the film industry.
I've been very lucky that the men that I've worked with, and all of them have been male directors, have been very generous, have been very open to suggestions. I haven't experienced any sexism because I think they look upon me as someone who's a seasoned performer and a professional. I'm afraid it probably does exist for younger, less experienced actresses who are maybe just first coming out and don't know themselves as well as knowing the industry, and could have the potential of being taken advantage of, especially in Hollywood, where position is so important there, and making your way in the industry is important for a young woman. So I had to say, I'm sure it does be to a lot of women who are inexperienced and don't understand the industry and don't understand how they can take control. They are the ones in control of themselves, their body, their career. Whereas I've been in the industry long enough to know that I can see it if it happens, and I know how to stay away from it. I could see in basically in an audition if a director is sexist or misogynistic. I just won't work with them. Whereas a young actress starting out feels like, I need to take everything I can get, Okay, I'll take my shirt off for this role, or I'll do this for that role, and don't understand that, no, you don't have to do that. You can still stay confident in who you are and be strong in who you are and not have to be exploited in that way.
A woman has to be a superwoman. If she's going to be a career woman, she may be penalized for also being a mother. If she has to take the time out to be a mom. We don't celebrate that here. Other countries are way ahead of us on that, and we're going to need to get there. I think there's pressure on a woman, just timing-wise, to when can I have a family? How do I make all this work? And then they don't want to appear weak during that time. So there's constant, there must be, I'm assuming, constant overcompensation to try and just stay on the level playing field with their colleagues. And I'm sure they feel a lot of pressure.
I couldn't speak for all men, and I try not to, and I think that's really kind of the problem for many of us, is that we tend to generalize. Men are holding women down, and we know everything is a case-by-case basis. That said, on a systemic level, we know that there are more men in power, and so for me personally, I'm both a woman and a woman of color who's worked in a nonprofit field, who enjoys smaller budget type films. I'm not seen as someone who's trying to mount a career to be in domination, if you will. And I think that's how a lot of women are viewed. I think a lot of women are seen as the ones that prefer to do smaller narrative or character-driven work, or keep it within storytelling, as opposed to let's just throw in more explosions or action sequences. And right now the market is very interesting, because I think television is showing us that people like those stories. People like nuance. People want to know where the pockets of society are, and see that on television more than you can do in film, because film is still such an economic undertaking. So I think women overall, like me, are now getting seen as more and more of an asset, because we have a desire to see more specific storytelling on screen.
For me personally, I haven't experienced that, but I've heard, especially in entertainment, right? You hear women talking about they go on set and they represent 100 women standing behind them if they have to succeed, because it's seen as if you're taking a risk on a woman, right? Whereas for a white male, they'll give them a job easily, and they're giving them an opportunity. Whereas if you're working with a woman, it's seen as you're giving her a risk. And if you add a woman of color to that, it's even more of a risk. So yes, in the entertainment industry, for sure, the gender discrimination is huge, and that's evidenced by the statistics on employment opportunities for men and women in the entertainment industry.
I think that there right now is definitely a shift in gender equality. I think that this past year, the year of Oscars So White, I think that we are perhaps seeing a renaissance in both film as well as television for female content creators, both on the film side as well as the television side. And I think that's both in front of and behind the camera. I think a lot of people are paying attention and trying to play their part in changing the conversation and the landscape. So that's exciting, but a few small steps doesn't mean that there isn't more work to do. I think we have a lot of work to do still.
I think the people at the very top would have to be very evolved to not look at a woman differently. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't surprise me if a woman in power who was not a mother looked at one of her underlings differently for being a mom or for wanting to be a mom. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I just think that, you know, there's always pressure on the top person to make sure that we don't lose money. And so, yeah, I understand how it happens, but we're going to have to become much more evolved because it's not fair. The hardest thing to have, I think, in the entertainment industry is balance. And a woman who wants a family should certainly be supported in that. And we all need that sort of support along the way. This is not an easy profession in any stretch of the imagination, but I don't really know many professions that you would consider easy these days. So I think in every profession across the board, we have to do more to make sure that women are allowed to have more balance and not feel like they have to be superheroes to get it done.
Oh goodness, there are so many women that I admire that make film and are in film, from directors like Mira Nair and Jane Campion, Amy Heckerling, who did Clueless. I mean, that movie made an indelible mark on me as a kid, for better or for worse. But you know, it was something that I didn't realize meant so much until I got older. Even a film like Bend It Like Beckham by Gurinder Chadha, it was a movie that really, as a high schooler, was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. It's a sports movie, but it's women, and it's a girl buddy movie, and it's not really about getting the guy, even though there was one. So for sure, I think there have been women through my life that have impacted me so much, and I didn't even realize it.
I've had so many amazing women in my life. The very first one would have been my very first acting teacher when I was 12 years old, and I was working in a community theater group. And she was this incredible actor who was also a mentor and loved helping children. So I learned a great deal from her in this very prominent theater in Houston, Texas, which is called the Alley Theater. So I was able to be around professional actors all around, watching their craft and seeing how they performed. And that had a huge influence on me, because it shows me that if I show up and if I study and I work hard, then the results will come.
I look at a lot of women, a lot of actresses and even writers, and Emma Thompson is one of those women I just completely admire and adore. She's been in the business for so long. She was one of the first women to win an Oscar for her screenplay for Sense and Sensibility. She is one of those actresses who can do comedy, who can do drama, and being a British actress, she hasn't fallen into that, you know, you have to have everything tightened and fixed and look like you're 22, and even though you're in your 50s and 60s. And I think that's very admirable and inspiring, and something that I hope to aspire to is that feeling of, I'm just here to do the work.
A ton of women that have had an impression on me, and I'm constantly, you know, gaining new mentors and also inspiration from other filmmakers that are both, ahead of me as well as my peers as well. I mean, I'm inspired by, filmmakers who are my friends, some of my best friends. They inspire me every day.
The women who've had the most direct impact on me would be agents, my wonderful managers, but also, without those wonderful casting directors who primarily have been women in my lifetime, who offered me great opportunity, offered me great advice. I certainly would have never had a career without them. And it's interesting because casting directors have not been rewarded financially or with the accolades that they really deserve over the course of time. It has been a profession that's been primarily women. I wonder if this would be different if the profession really began with more men in it. So that's possibly an area where there could be some women who have a lot to say.
I think a personal challenge for me is, yes, I am a woman and I am a filmmaker, but sometimes, you know, you just want to be in the conversation and be considered a filmmaker and not really have this, you know, prefix in front of, you know, the job that you do. So I think that can be challenging at times. And also to be considered a filmmaker and not a female filmmaker of color. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, just constantly, you know, trying to up my game and become a better artist and a better filmmaker, and not be put into these categories, even though they apply. I think that there is something to be said about, you know, being able to just talk about an artist for the work that they are creating and not, you know, all these other things that shouldn't really matter. I mean, we don't talk about, you know, we don't say white filmmakers when we talk about, you know, people who are not of color. So it's, yeah, I would say that that would be one of my challenges.
The biggest challenge is sexism and gender discrimination really is endemic to everything. It's not just rooted in Hollywood, it's everywhere. As we've seen even in the last couple months and in the wake of a very tumultuous election, people are still not coexisting well together. People are still discriminating against each other based on race, based on religion, based on gender orientation, and especially even though women make up more than half of the country, you know, it's really an interesting time to be a woman and explore, like, what is my power? Why am I important to this society, and how come I'm not in more control of it? We even saw a campaign like Hillary Clinton's where a lot of the, you know, pressure she faced and discrimination she faced was because of her gender. So I think to move the needle in Hollywood really is a much bigger question. Even though we can work on it on our end and try and get more women directors hired, it really is societal and raising both young girls and boys to recognize that we're equal.
Women in this profession in every aspect. But beyond my having any feeling for it whatsoever, I think it's absolutely necessary. You know, Hollywood is we put out movies for the entire world. We tend to have a rather myopic point of view. So I don't think it's only women that should be in places of power in the industry. I think it needs to be many cultures represented here. And probably if you go across the country, there's a lot of religions who feel underrepresented in Hollywood. So I'm not quite sure we're doing a good enough job of making sure that everyone feels included in what comes out of Hollywood.